returning once again. Sorry for the delay in episodes. We've had a lot going on. A lot of our actually somebody posted on Facebook asking when the next episode would be, and Jesse responded basically. He's running his own company. We got a big project at my job, and John, our other regular guest, is in the process of moving to New York, and he just got there like what, yesterday. So, yeah. Anyway,
He's out.
I'm back and introducing Chad Gleason.
Hey.
He's an old buddy of mine, animator, owns his own company kind of guy. He's a self-made man. Family man, lovely home. He's got it together.
When you're on the other end of it, it doesn't sound quite as interesting. All right. Glad to be here, man. Happy to be on the show, Christopher.
Yeah. Yeah, Chad's an old friend of mine. Got when 1998 or 1999? Is that when we met?
I think it
Or
was
2000.
past 2000. I think it was 2000.
Maybe 2000.
When the hell? When did that come out? Like we met on Gore, and that was I think I was the last one to show up. So what was like 9 months maybe, Dev, before.
Yeah, it shipped in 2002. Anyway, we'll talk about that in a bit. I kind of wanted to say first, like, well, as an animator, and that's what you predominantly still call yourself, right? Or that was just your position in games?
The animator has definitely always been my favorite part. So that's the title I like to have.
But you can still make all the arts and stuff fine. But
yeah, totally.
But anyway, yeah. So Chad, how did you first get into animation? Again, you're in Nebraska. You've pretty much been there your whole life, right?
Yep.
Was there any place you went to school for that, or?
Nope.
You just kind of did it.
Well, especially when I started doing it, it was like, I mean, not to go too far back, but I didn't really see. I didn't originally have aspirations to make games. I mean, it was I just wanted to. To me, it was all about the movies. You animate, Disney and Industrial Light and Magic, and Star Wars was a huge inspiration. All the same stuff. Everybody's got that. But it was just there was no training at all for that kind of thing. It was just like anytime you talk about going to school, it's about maybe go to art school. That's about the best you can do. And most of the time, art school is you've got the trade schools and you've got the 2-year associate programs, and then you've got the universities, which have you can get a master's in fine arts, all this stuff. But absolutely none of it even knew what a computer was. Probably, I mean, this was
absolutely. We both kind of old guys. Back when we went to school, there was no education for this.
Oh hell no! I mean,
I went to my game programming class. They taught us Excel.
Yeah. Oh well, yeah.
Well, it wasn't game programming, just programming.
Yeah, it was like for the most part, if you wanted to do CG in any form, whether it's real time or not, it was just like that was the best you could hope for as a fine arts class. Maybe you can draw a nude, and that was if you went to a really cool school, and anyone who was going to teach it was absolutely clueless. They were usually some old professor that they handed them a copy of Photoshop and said, "Here, learn this and teach your students something." So it was just terrible. I mean, it was just a horrible time if you wanted to actually train on and learn this stuff on your own. So really, it was just kind of like the realm of the enthusiast at the time. You just really loved it and wanted to get into it. PC software for this type of stuff was finally getting to the point where you could get your hands on it. So I just played and screwed around, and got reasonably good at it. Got a job making flying logos for a small little production outfit here in Nebraska, and kind of got carved out of wood there. Where it was pretty much do or die, get it done. You got 3 days to get it out, do it now, render time at all. But for the most part, it was on the job. It was training. It was learning on your own in my basement, basically. Didn't even have digital tutors or Gnomon to work off of. It was just. It's just kind of.
Oh yeah, there was barely any internet back then.
Yeah, I know.
Actually, especially you in such a rural area. The Midwest barely has the internet now. You know what I mean?
The internet? What's that?
I think a few years ago, my mom was like, "Oh, I can finally get internet in my house now." You know what I mean?
Yeah, we were pretty excited about color television, but before I got my first computer. So So yeah, totally self-taught. I actually went to school. I went back to school after I'd already started working, and just because I wanted to get the degree, and I show up at this school, and it was like me and the professor just kind of became buds because I knew more than him. And it was a thankfully, luckily he actually worked in the industry as well, so we were actually kind of peers at that point, and it was fun to just hang out with him. I just sort of dicked around in class and and eventually dropped out because it was like, why am I paying for this? Thankfully,
it's still very prevalent in today's schools. You get kids that are just in there.
Yeah.
But then you might have one or two students that actually try.
It's really frustrating because a lot of kids they're led they're led to believe that if you want to do something if you want a career, all you have to do is go to school for it. I mean, I want to be a doctor. I'll just go to school for it. And when I graduate, I'll be a doctor. I want to be
That's $300K debt right there.
Yeah, no shit. And well, for some reason, somewhere along the line, I don't know if I blame the parents or what, but it's like these kids actually believe that they go from liking video games. I like to play video games. I think Madden's a great game. I play GTA. I play it 8 hours a day. They seem to think they can go from that to game developer with a 2-year associate's degree. And it's really frustrating because people really lead them to believe that that's what they can. That's all you have to do. Just show up, do your coursework, and when you graduate, you got your job at Bungie, you got your job at Blizzard.
Yeah, it's usually not happening.
No, not really. But yeah, I mean, digressing already.
No, it's perfect. So you fill time.
But yeah. I've in my general experience, I've kind of found that the best production artists are the ones who just loved making art, and they just sort of segued into this commercial application for it. It was like
it's definitely a passion business, and
yeah,
even if it's not, it's like that's the worst thing in the world, to be just sitting at a job all day that you hate. It just makes you so miserable.
Oh yeah,
it's like, boy, I hate doing this.
I know. Well, when you consider the hours that a lot of us are forced to work on, and a lot of the crap that you kind of have to put up with as far as the industry is concerned, it's got to be a passion job. Otherwise, you are just, what are you doing here? It's just, it's like you could have better pay, better benefits, and better job stability answering phones. It's
yeah, but then that's what you're doing. So
I know. But
it's like that whole like just changing your hat every day you wake up and like, oh, I think Rogan came up with this. Joe Rogan.
Mm-hmm.
Something like people at the TSA. They're not like real trained security people. They're just regular people that just woke up and like, oh, this is the hat I'm wearing today, and it might have been a Burger King cap.
Yep.
It might have been, one of these jobs that you pretty much do it.
Well, yeah, you become an expert at it just by the fact that that's what you do. That's what you sort of fell into, and now you know these things.
But by the way, I would like to say one positive thing about TSA is they recently, that guy that's right up front, before you even get in the security line, he looks at your ID and your boarding pass. That guy's he's the Walmart greeter. They stick a lovely older gentleman or woman up there, and they're like, "Oh, hey, how you doing? Nice to see you." It's like the new Walmart greeter. I noticed. And had the nicest guy recently.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
There's something to be said about the Walmart greeter, man. I mean, you walk into this
Welcome
place.
to Costco. I love you.
Yeah, and they're like, "Hey, would you like a cart? If you see you have a kid there, would that kid like a sticker? Just brightens your whole day." I really appreciate the Walmart greeter, to be honest.
I recently read on Reddit, of course, that the purpose behind the Walmart greeter is it's highly effective at reducing shoplifting. Because when someone's nice to you at the door, you feel like, oh.
Well, yeah, and honestly, I was about ready to say this. The Walmart greeter I actually like. Who I don't like are the Best Buy greeters. Are you familiar with the Best Buy
Those
Theater?
assholes. Those guys are the worst.
It's
Always
like
been the worst. Because it's a young
it's
guy that hates
some
his
young
job.
yeah, some young douchebag
But
that
but honestly, when's the last time anybody's been in a Best Buy?
I know.
Like 2007?
Quite possibly, yeah. Yeah, it's just, but it's like it's just a complete difference in attitude. You can just see their training like transparently. It's like, all right, what you need to do, you need to when every person that walks in, you walk right up to them and you greet them. You say, "Hi, how you doing? What can I do for you?" It's like aggressive, where it's like they want you to know that they know you're here, and it's probably exactly that.
Oh,
It's
what's
probably
up,
exactly
motherfucker?
it's probably exactly to help prevent shoplifting just by making it plainly aware that they're aware that you're in this building and they're watching you. Uh,
I get that
whereas,
sometimes. Sometimes I'll get those guys or girls. Either way, not just there. It could be anywhere, especially more at restaurants. I can see it more. Like with restaurants and like a hostess. And as soon as you walk in, they're like, "Hey!" I'm like, "Whoa!" Like, I grew up on a farm, so I know that body language that freaks animals out, and it's exactly that. Those that over enthusiastic, fast movement. It's
yeah,
like
yeah, really,
that's
really
a quick
herky
way to
jerky.
get. That's a quick way to get hit.
Yeah, yep. Oh, that's awesome.
No sudden moves around me, ma'am.
Yeah, we are base animals
Yeah.
at the end of the day. It's pretty hilarious watching the herd mentality in humans sometimes.
People are weird. Anyway,
Uh,
so your first job, you said you're doing like the flying logos and stuff.
yep.
How did that transition into like animation that was going to be
Um,
more like people running around and stuff, like what people think of
yeah,
animation, like a bunch of run cycles.
yeah, yeah. I mean, animation is uh, that it, you know that is kind of what it is. I mean, when you think of when you want to, especially back in the day when you said you wanted to be an animator. I mean, there was no other application. You're talking about making characters
Yeah, like
and
drawing
yeah, you're
cartoons
drawing
basically.
cartoons
That's what people
exactly.
think of
Yeah,
an animator.
yeah. I mean,
Smurfs.
I think the term's a little broader in a lot of circles these days,
Yeah.
but especially back then, that's all there was, and uh, and so, but at the same time, when you just want to make things, right around that time, that's when off the shelf CG packages were starting to really show up, and it was like this discovery where it's like, oh my God, I can make everything, and well, when you're in Lincoln, Nebraska, you don't have uh,
You got a lot of time.
yeah,
That's why they have
yeah,
so many great athletes come out of there because they've got a lot of time on their hands,
yeah, and there's not a lot of
things to
there are
do.
not too many high-end CG houses in Lincoln, Nebraska, to be honest.
Sure, it's not like a
Um,
booming economy. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
No
So
Silicon Valley.
yeah, exactly. So when you're a kid, you just pretty much want to grab whatever you can get, well, there was this little shop, they made it was just doing video production, and back then, if you were doing video production and you were an animator for a video production house, 80% of your time was spent animating some company logo. Rotate it this way, add a lens flare.
Oh, absolutely.
It was fantastic. Um, as far as it segueing into something a little better, it was kind of a couple of things. First and foremost, I all the stuff that I learned to be a better animator was not at my job. All my job did was kind of discipline me to focus and work faster, but as far as like learning how to animate and create, you know, everything from environments to creatures it was pretty much again self-taught at home, and then I'd bring that to work the next day and try to squeeze it into a project here or there, uh, and eventually hooked up with. I finally left that place, worked for an agency kind of style place, and they were I don't know how they got in contact with Joel. Maybe Joel was just calling around Lincoln looking for extra hands, but
Okay, and those that don't know, Joel is the prez, I guess, of 4D
founder,
Rulers,
yeah, president,
the company that
president,
made
founder,
Gore, where
founders.
we met. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, and well, little. little outfit in Beatrice, Nebraska, working out
Mm-hmm.
of the garage, making a video game, I started helping out in kind of a freelance capacity um, with 40 rulers, and eventually I was just kind of like, hey, Joel, I mean, I'm doing all this freelance work. Do you need a slot filled? I'll just start coming to work every day. You know, I mean, it was
Right.
just,
We had no
it,
animator.
yeah. So it was like, I basically just kind of worked to talk to Joel into letting me sit in his office, and that was pretty much that. Um, soon as soon as I got going at 40 rulers, it was just like opened everything wide open. Suddenly it was like massive on the job training. It was like, okay, all of a sudden I'm making games. And
Oh
and
yeah, and not that great of a game engine either.
no, it wasn't. But that was, you know,
We were lucky because like
oh my
you
God.
did all your animations in what, Max or Maya?
Yeah, it was Max at the
Okay,
time.
and I did pretty much all my textures in Photoshop or like models
Paint
in
Shop.
Max. You know what I mean? Yeah, Paint Shop Pro.
Yeah.
Used
Yeah,
Paint
you
Shop
were
Pro back then.
yeah,
I
you
was
were a
a
Paint Shop Pro
whiz. I
guy.
was a fucking
Yeah.
whiz. But so I didn't really have to deal with that engine so much. But God, those poor level designers.
Well, the speaking of engines, well, I don't. Well, I'll get remind me to talk about tools when we get to Colorado. Uh, the Yeah, the engine was terrible, but thankfully, well, actually, no, there was no thing. I remember one of the mandates with
That's
Gore.
that was really funny to me. Actually, there was no thankful.
Oh no,
Okay,
well,
go
there
ahead.
wasn't. There was very little redeeming qualities about working in that engine. As an animator, you're when you're tasked. Okay, what we need you to do is we need you to do run cycles, walk cycles, gun shooting, reloads, death animations. You need to
Pain
do all of those.
animations.
Yeah, paint. Yeah, but here's the catch, guy. Here's the catch. It has to look good in both third person and first person.
Oh yeah, this is one of those
There,
things that ruined that game.
yeah.
And
Oh
and one of
man.
those things that why for some reason people think this idea of attaching a third person camera into the front of a character's head so that you can see their body and movements is a good thing. It's not really that good. What you really want to do is to continue to fake it with a standard FPS camera that does when you look down you can see like hands and feet that are just kind of projected but not the real
Yeah.
because
The-
oh my god,
yep.
every animation and I felt so bad for you guys because I'll break this down real quick for people. Every animation that the person does, like, okay, if you want to have, you're playing a first-person shooter, and I want to like attack a guy, and he needs to do a pain animation. Now to visualize that, it's always like some kind of wacky, like, whatever.
Yeah.
But what that means in first person is that's arms being thrown in front of the camera, guns being thrown in front of the camera, and the worst was the flamethrower because the flamethrower attached flame
Flames.
to like bones or whatever, and so your whole screen would just be covered like your arm going whoa whoa with just flames coming off of your arms. And it
And
was
the
just
best
ridiculous.
and the best part was that it had to. I couldn't move the head very much, because otherwise it would totally throw off your view. Because
Yeah, so
literally,
he had to animate the head like literally sitting
yeah,
in
'cause
position
the
while the
camera
body is moving around it. That's the biggest problem.
yeah, the camera was literally stapled
If
to
you
your
really
head.
had it like on the head and it's a guy's like bouncing around, if you're
Mhm.
actually running, that doesn't happen. But it's an issue of animation in a game versus a camera and people getting motion sick and throwing up and destroying gameplay. It's a
So,
very difficult task, and I applaud you
uh,
guys for being able to get it as well as you did.
well, yeah, it was like this constant balancing act where it's like, okay, I'd make this run cycle. Ah, it looks pretty good, and then we'd actually play it in game, and everyone would be like, okay, I'm going to throw up. This is terrible, Chad. So it'd be like, oh, so I have to pare it back, and then all of a sudden it looked terrible in third person, and so it was like this constant balancing act. And the only time you ever got to occasionally just say, okay, screw the camera, and even then you couldn't, was during a death scene because now you were no longer in control because your character was now dying. So I was able to flail the head and move the
Those
arms.
were pretty funny.
And then even then it would be like, hey Chad, the camera's passing through the floor. I think we need to elevate his head. So then when you'd see a guy lying on the floor dead, he'd be like floating, because we had to get him high enough off the ground so he wouldn't pass through the floor because the camera was still stuck to the head of the dead guy. Um, oh yeah, it was fun. It was good times. No cutscene of any kind. So when we actually started trying to make first person. We actually had to. We decided we needed to have a first person or a single player element for the game. So we had to tack a single player game onto a purely multiplayer title.
What that was how publishers used to. They still do. Just really fuck developers hard. We had the whole game was a multiplayer game. That's what it was. It was all deathmatch maps. It was all multiplayer. That was the whole point of the game. And games like Quake 3 Arena and Unreal Tournament they've already been out. These games are out. And it's fairly successful, but for some reason the publisher said, no, you have to have single player.
Mm-hmm.
Which now, check it out now, EA says they won't publish any game that doesn't have multiplayer.
Right.
Yeah. So this is how stupid and backwards our publisher was.
Oh, and it was so to the detriment of the game because
absolutely, because you know what happens when people review the game?
They
totally only play the single player.
Yep. Yeah. Well, I remember every review we read was that it was they'd give it just these scathing reviews. The somethingawful.com review was my favorite. It was such a scathing review. I found it to be incredibly.
I loved all the reviews because I knew what was up with the game. I mean, the game was fun.
Well, that's just it. All the reviews about whenever they talked about multiplayer, they're like, "Yeah, it's fun. We had a good time playing multiplayer," and then they'd devote like one paragraph to the fun multiplayer, and then they'd spend the rest of the review just lambasting it for its terrible single player. And
the single player for that game was just
it was atrocious.
Shit it out in a few months. I designed the whole thing too. Remember that?
Yeah. That being said,
why did I do that?
I was extremely proud of it's one of those things where the audience, your audience, will never appreciate the fact that we were able to squeeze out that putrid ass single player in the time and the resources that we had. It wasn't just lack of time and lack of resources, that was all there, but it was also the fact that we had to literally reverse engineer a single player story, a cohesive plot out of a bunch of completely disconnected environments. The Gore, the Gore was Gore was like one of those. How would you describe the design behind Gore? It was kind of like whatever we thought was cool Quake. That week. Yeah. Well, no. It was Quake had a consistent art design. This was like today we're gonna make a haunted house. Tomorrow we're gonna have future. Next we're gonna do Old West. I mean, it was like this completely. Every level had its own theme. Which was, and a lot of and the whole conceit behind it was that it was all virtual combat. So it was like you would load. It was like a holodeck. You'd load up the haunted house scene. You'd load up the Quake style scene. You'd load up this. And that was great for multiplayer because you had these varied environments. It's like every environment.
It was perfect. Everything was totally different. That was kind of our downfall. In that we didn't stick with a few really big, say you take one style and another style, and you have levels in that style and then levels that have it mixed.
Right.
That's enough. But we decided just make whatever.
I remember there was a gothic theme.
Yeah, I was going to say for those with the benefit of video, I just while you were talking there, I loaded up. I found a YouTube video. If you Google Gore. Or if you YouTube Gore PC gameplay, I'll link you the video, Chad, so you can check it out. And I'll put it in the description link. I don't know what this video is. It's just somebody playing.
I'm almost afraid.
And they're in one of the space station levels, so it's like super futuristic and all that shit. And they're being chased by skeletons with chainsaws.
You know what?
And man, I'll tell you what, we were scrutinized for that, but today people fucking love Painkiller.
Well, yeah,
but Painkiller, I will admit, is a better game.
you know what? Gore could have very well. It was all kind of a timing thing with Gore. It was released too late to kind of cash in on the arena deathmatch craze at the time. Anything that was like Quake had a chance in the marketplace, but it was like 1 or 2 years late for that. Counter-Strike was becoming huge. And
Oh, we played Counter-Strike at that office so much.
oh yeah,
It was the
and
best because, you know, back then everybody had dial-up and shitty internet. We're talking
yeah.
about turn of the millennium. Long time. 13 years ago.
Oh, this is a single player stage.
Yeah, it's great. And
That's
so
terrible.
right now I'm watching the same video. Let me put this on. He's currently fighting a fat biker dude holding a beer. Okay, he shot him. The biker guy was great. We manipulated the weapons. Most weapons were two-handed. We made it for him. They were all one-handed except for a few
Yeah.
because his offhand
It's holding a
always
beer.
had a beer in it. That as he would play, they animated it so that he would be drinking. And he would drink while shooting and running everything. It was ridiculous. Absolutely
Oh, it's
ridiculous.
beautiful.
What the fuck?
It's beautiful. The thing is, if you look at this game now, and I'm like, if this game was made almost as is today, it'd be like oh my god, it is a whole thing of skeletons. This game was great. Screw everybody. The But just imagine, we had to literally make a cohesive, coherent, single-player story out of this, and I think we the conceit we used was like it was like a time travel mechanic or something like that, where it was just like I don't even remember exactly what we were chasing after this guy who had like he had the plans or
The
something.
device is mine.
All the voices were by staff,
Yeah,
and we.
it was great. We always.
Uh,
I remember what was that one you did that was so fucking funny?
oh
Do you
God,
remember?
was it the screaming from fire or something like that?
You had a few that were pretty funny.
I was the voice guy. I was the guy on the comm always.
Oh yeah, that's
Uh,
right, dude. You were the narrator for the game.
yeah, I know. I was a narrator,
That's
and then
fucking crazy.
I think I was obviously one of the henchmen that had to burn in a fire. Those were so. Oh, this is so many good memories. This is outstanding. Um,
He's just laughing because he's watching the video. I'm watching it too, and it's
uh,
it's cool.
well, I was just watching it, just some of the stuff that was just so terribly. We would be so amused at how goofy some of the stuff was. We just kept it in place the whole time. Um, but this is nothing though compared to Secret Service.
Oh yeah.
We remember you and I one night. Secret Service had just came out, and this was after we'd left 40
Oh
Rulers,
yeah. Well, we got together and played the game
and
at
we
your
played
house
the
or
game.
mine. I think it was at yours.
It was both. I think. I think we started it at mine, moved it to yours.
Okay.
And I remember we drank heavily,
We did.
and yeah, and it was it was like a celebratory night because we knew it was going to be terrible. We were involved in the development somewhat.
Yeah,
They
let me throw
reused.
this backstory out just to fill
Yeah.
people in who don't know what we're
Okay.
talking about right now. The next game 4D Rulers made after Gore was called Secret Service. It was actually it was actually the first game to ship that used like normal maps. Like it was one of the
Yeah.
very first next gen games, even before Doom 3.
Right.
But did you actually do any work on it?
Yeah, I animated
Okay.
the characters. It was,
Okay, I didn't do any work on it, but
But they
all
used all
the
your
textures
textures.
are mine. And but no, but go ahead and say what you were going to say about it, and I'll be right back, and I'll tell about why I had so much art in the game while not
Uh,
being a developer. It's
While
genius.
not even being a developer.
It's genius. Anyway, go ahead.
But we were essentially this game was hugely kind of cut off at the knees because it had a incredibly compressed timeline. Most of the development staff was freelancing at the time, and the programmers were uh, investing heavily in trying to get all this new technology running, normal mapping and stencil shadows and all this stuff. And so by the time the game was ready to ship, and it was a do or die ship, I think this was Activision Value that was the publisher. And if I remember correct, the Activision Value it was like one of the reasons why it is value is because we pay for 6 months of dev time. When that 6 months is up, we're shipping this game no matter what. And by the time we got to month 6, there were so many bugs. It was completely untested. There was absolutely no beta testing of any kind on this game. The level designers pretty much had to just slam together whatever they could get done The bugs were all over the place.
I come back to you just disparaging the project.
Well, no. But I'm describing what they had to work with at the time. It was an Activision value project, so they had 6 months to get this thing out, and they were experimenting with new tech that was, like you said, they were one of the first ones to come out with normal maps, and I mean, so their programmer was absolutely neck deep in just trying to get this graphics engine up and running, because there was no. This was all his. There was no. He had very little time to get that up and running. So that meant all the gameplay systems were completely undone. I mean, it was just, and they were going to ship it. It was shipping in 6 months, no matter what. So when it shipped, we were like, okay, this one's going to be interesting. So Chris and I, we basically just got some beers, got the game, went back to his place, started up, and just started playing through it. And man, that was a fun night. It was, but the good news with that from an animation standpoint was that because we were starting a new project, I wasn't locked in any sort of legacy stuff, so we were able to disconnect the game camera from the head of the main player, so we were able to actually animate first person and third person stuff separately. So to that end, I was pretty happy. But yeah, that was an interesting title, but I don't necessarily fault anyone that worked on it for how it turned out, because it was kind of one of those impossible projects. There was just no way this game was going to ship in any great state, just due to the only hope you would have to ship a game in 6 months and it be a complete game in 6 months is if you literally were just piggybacking right off of something that you'd done. You weren't in
brutal.
Yeah.
Unless you're making like a game for the Game Boy Advance.
Well, or like an expansion pack where all you're doing is making new levels for the game that's already there.
Making a full game that people expect it to be competitive. They expect it to be competitive with AAA titles or.
Yeah. I mean, it's like that's how audiences judge a game, no matter what they paid for it. No matter, it's like if this game comes out, there's no tiered system where it's like, hey, you know what? For a 6-month budget title, this game was good. That's not how it gets graded in the marketplace. It's pretty much, this game is shit because it's tough, but it's understandable. I mean, the industry is what it is. But yeah, I got so heavily invested in talking about why Secret Service turned out the way it did that I didn't get to the part of our playthrough. My favorite part, and the part that actually made us, we actually could not complete the game. It was impossible to beat.
Oh yeah, we got to that point where there was some bug or something.
Yeah, it was like this game could not actually be completed. That's how.
But wasn't it like we were lucky because the console commands from Gore still worked, right?
Yeah. Okay. I think the console.
That's how we got. I remember that's how we got through it, right?
There was my favorite part that had us literally on the floor. Now, okay, we probably had a few beers in us at the time, but we were in this long hallway, and we turned a corner, and we're standing right.
The rocket launcher guy.
Right on the other side of the hallway, literally standing right there, waiting for you to show up. When you turn this corner, there's a guy with a rocket launcher who point blank shoots you in the face and kills himself and you. I'm pretty sure he spawned there, so you couldn't. You couldn't draw him out.
Yeah.
He was, as soon as he spawned, the only way he would spawn is if you were on top of him, and as soon as he spawned, he shot the rocket, so you were pretty much dead at that point. Oh man, it was so much fun. There was
some similar things like that. I remember just in the development of Gore when we had to do that awful single player. It was fun to do. Don't get me wrong, but
it was
a blast. The whole development was a blast, but it's just one of those things where it was an ill-fated project just because of the way they got with the way the publisher treated.
Yeah, if that game would have shipped as a pure multiplayer game, it would have had a shot. Yeah. I mean, I think it would have developed a following, and it would have gotten favorable reviews. Maybe it had
it for a while. The forum stayed up going for a while. It's still up.
Yeah, I mean, it's really.
And the game's like free to play now, right?
Oh God, I haven't checked.
It is. I'm pretty sure you go to 40rulers.com. It's free to download the whole game.
Oh man,
But
I'm gonna have to. There it
what I
is.
was saying is in the development for making that silly single player for the game.
Mhm.
Like you said, I was for some reason put in charge of that. What I did, this was my process. I took all the levels, and I took the ones that were kind of in a modernish to slightly sci-fi theme, and linked them up as like a okay, this is the real world. And then at some point you go into the virtual world machine, and that's when in the story, of course,
Right.
and that's when you start going to like medieval castles and spaceships and the future, like all that stuff. But the way I would do it is I would just play the deathmatch levels or capture the flag levels, whatever they were, and find and figure out where you could block off spaces and make the level take the longest amount of time to run through, like a straight through run through. And then once I did that, I figured that out, and then basically the level designers, it was up to them to kind of figure out, like, besides my own suggestions, placement for mobs, bad guys, whatever you want to call it.
Hmm.
And we always had that one problem with the one guy. I'm not gonna say his name. What I'm talking about. The guy that coughed a lot. Um, he would do this for his levels where he did that exact thing. There was one of his levels. There was a door here, and as soon as you walk into the door, it's like a closed hallway. It's right to your left is a sniper with a sniper rifle with his the barrel is pretty much on your head when you come around the corner, and he's just like instantly kills you.
Well, it didn't help that it didn't help that I think especially in his case, uh, he had his levels and he made it. He was kind of it was kind of his baby, I guess. At least that's kind of how I felt about it about his reaction. And you'd be like, all right, now we're doing a single player version of this here. This is your route. And he'd look at it and be like, oh my God, I have to like completely redesign the look of this thing to fit that route, you know? And so he'd start slapping in these completely like you'd be in like a living room with a couch and a television, and blocking the door would be like a barbed wire fence. Just it was like this
Instead of just a
completely.
door that was locked.
Yeah, exactly. It'd be like it's like well because it was like this whatever. Okay, you told me to block it, so I blocked it with the whatever asset I could quickly find and slap in
Well,
there.
to his
So
to his defense, he didn't have any training or skills.
well, not only that, but,
That's totally not to his
well,
defense. No, he
well,
never worked on games before. He's just a guy. It was like, hey, you want to do this, and he did it.
right. Well, not only that, but he
But
also
that's
had
pretty cool
the
that he just fucking did it because a lot of his like that haunted house level looked
well.
pretty nice.
Well, here's the thing I'll give him, is that when you consider the fact that all the art outside of textures was modeled in that editor. There was
The attention to detail that he was able to create in that editor,
yeah,
I
it
would
was
say
unbelievable.
definitely outweighs any of his flaws.
I know.
Because
I mean, it was like
anybody that could make anything like that in the editor's like, holy shit. And that guy was modeling in like curved
yep.
fireplace. He put some serious work in.
That's
It's all BSP. It's
yeah. It was like
crazy.
yeah. I mean, he was modeling cars and trash cans, and we had a few static meshes, but for the most part, static they couldn't receive the baked lighting the way the rest of the BSP could. So it was just like he'd model the whole haunted house with. It was just like you used that editor to make that. I'll shake your hand
It's
if I did.
quite impressive when somebody can take
Yeah.
an editor. I mean, these days we're so spoiled, man. If
Oh
you're somebody
man.
that has like access to CryEngine or Unreal Engine, it's like,
Well, we played with we had just shipped Gore, and we were already we were we were getting ready to kind of gear up for Gore too. I mean, it was just what the team was there. We got to get started. Let's get going. So, and we experimented with other engines. And we got a hold of Unreal's 2000 or their Unreal 2K4 before what was Unreal.
it was Unreal Tournament basically.
Yeah, but it was like their next
Yeah,
revamp.
it was
It was
their
like
new
their
one.
next.
It was
It was their
the new
next.
one, yeah.
And
And it had that sweet physics demo where the guy just falls and
yeah, yeah, yeah.
hits
And it was
everything on the way down.
and I remember us use it. We were playing around with that, and we were just absolutely awestruck at how much easier our job could have been had we been using this engine. And
It was
that
immediately
was
like, wow, I didn't know you were that good of an artist. Look
I
at what you
know.
can do.
I know.
Yeah, it's not. That's just a tech, bro.
Yeah.
It's
Oh, and
held back.
I know, and well, and that moved that actually carried over to our next gig, which was Jalico. It was like we get there, and I think didn't the level artists have it a little easier? I mean, they spent quite a bit of time on the Goblin Commander's editor, didn't they? I mean, I didn't use the my only time the only part of the editor I used was the cinematics. This that was
Well,
probably I mean, you guys had a slightly easier time of it as the level as a world artist because you had quite a bit of time to sort of refine that. But I don't remember. What was your take on that editor?
well, as an artist, I pretty much only worked in. Was it Maya? Yeah, Maya.
Yeah.
Uh, Doing models and textures in Photoshop. Obviously, that's pretty much all I had to deal with.
Yeah, you
Um,
even had like you had scripts
Paul,
and editors that would,
yeah. Paul Forrest wrote uh, the program that, like displayed the meshes. So the game had a whole like a system of you could destroy everything in Goblin Commander. I actually have a Goblin Commander poster up right now. Actually, let me point the camera at it.
that is a badass poster, by the way. That was
Uh,
that's what happened. That's what happens when the production crew was able to finally take the marketing into their own hands
didn't Mike
because oh
Geiger
my
paint that?
they
Who was that?
they contracted someone from Blizzard at the time to do it. It was
By the way, it's this one. If you haven't seen it, you can't.
yeah, basically prior to that poster being commissioned, Jalico's marketing team, which consisted, I think, of the CEO's like son-in-law or something like
Oh,
that.
there's something weird about that. Yeah.
Yeah, they released cover art for like 3 or 4 Jalico games that released that previous season, and it was the absolute worst cover art. I mean, there are top 10 lists on the internet for worst box art, and that year's Jalico offerings, I think, is in 2 of them. Uh, the oh, for God's sakes, what was that Game Boy Advance game? It was actually a really fun game.
Jazz
Carnage.
Jackrabbit or
No,
Carnage?
it's
Yeah,
Carnage.
Carnage.
Carnage Rally.
Because they produced one of those rabbit games.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah,
I remember that.
Carnage Rally. Actually,
Carnage Rally.
keep going. I might have it right here.
That was that had some of the worst box art I'd ever seen. Uh, Nightcaster 2 had a good piece of art, horribly photoshopped. It was like this. It was just like somebody in their bedroom on a weekend banged out some covers, and that was what was releasing with these titles. And I remember the dev team for Goblin Commander just freaking out, and basically the overall mandate was there's no effing way that guy's touching Goblin Commander's cover, and they pretty much went straight to Blizzard. It got a hold of the guy that was, I think, responsible for Blizzard's cover art for Warcraft at the time, and commissioned. This is conjecture; I could be wrong. So that's what I remember it. But it
No, it's cool.
essentially,
Just make up a story. It's so
yeah.
old, people will believe it. It was like 2004.
But for the most part, but basically they came back with that, and it was just like, oh, it was like, oh man, that's amazing. That was just seeing that cover art was pretty inspiring. Actually, it was pretty awesome. But my experience with Goblin Commander's game engine was we were entering Death March mode. And I had up to that point not been involved directly in Goblin Commander's development. I was working on some unreleased titles, um, and they kind of did a whole call to arms for the whole studio. And pretty much everybody that worked at that studio was now going to work on Goblin Commander, and we had like 6 to 8 months or something like that, where it was just a complete death march. And my job when I came on when I got on the team was to create cinematics for the game, and up to that point, not a single one had been made. And and it was just me in a room at the beginning for these cinematics. They had an animation team that was a good group of animators, but they were busy doing all of the in-game animations for all the goblins. So I think the original mandate from on my end was that, hey, we need you to just move the camera around and we'll throw some text up, and you'll pan around the landscape and we'll throw up some text, and that'll be the story. And of course, me being kind of naive, I was like, no, man, we need real cinematics. I mean, this is going to be a big AAA game. We need real cinematics. And everyone was like, well, that's fine, dude, but we don't have any resources to improve the graphics and to improve your tool set or the engine in any way.
Right. And this is exactly what you were talking about earlier when you said, remind me about tools and color.
I've been waiting to talk about that.
Okay.
This was fun.
You've got something that's
this is burning, man.
Go ahead.
But so it was pretty much, and this is kind of self-inflicted, which is kind of because it's fun. Because really, all I needed to do to get a pass was to just move the camera around. But I wanted to do real cinematics. Convinced, so we talked about it with the producers, and they're like, "All right, let's do it," And Paul Forrest was kind of my. He was kind of like my tech support guy.
He was basically the tech artist at the company, I guess.
And I remember him just going, "Are you effing serious? No, there's no way this is going to work." And I'm like, "No, don't worry, man, I can do this." So I basically lived in my office for weeks while we were trying to get this going, and all I was doing was trying to figure out how to reverse engineer the horrible tool set for what I was trying to do, and try to find a workflow that would actually get cinematics into the game. Like, I could make animations, but since these were highly detailed, the assets for the cinematics were more detailed than the game cinematic or the game assets. But I had no smooth skinning, so all of my joints I had rigid binding joints on somewhat high detail meshes, so I got around that just fine. But I could only have, I think, like 20 bones in a mesh. And
right? Didn't I feel like at some point you described it as your limitations to bones made you like split up the mesh?
Yeah, I had to split every.
You were probably going to get into that, right?
Yeah. I had to split.
Like just to quickly break it down for people that don't really understand animation as much.
Oh, right. Sorry.
It's basically like, imagine bones inside your own body. If the more you're limited to those, the crappier you would move around. And bones were highly limited, especially back on the PlayStation days. PlayStation 2, that is. Console development is very restrictive. Go ahead.
Oh, fair. Imagine if you not only had only a few bones to work with, but then you'd have to break your own skeleton into 3 pieces and then stitch it back together somewhere else. So you'd have to walk. Your character would have to, your lower body would have to be an exported animation, your upper body would be an exported animation, and your head would be an exported animation.
Yeah.
And then the engine would stitch it all back together again, and you'd have to like manually tweak the values to get it all to line up because the engine wasn't very specific or accurate because it highly compressed the animation data. So you'd have like the waist would kind of be wobbling a little bit away from the torso, and I'd have to tweak that, and then once you've animated your performance, your camera, when you place your camera into this little scene that you've created, you can't actually see any of the actors. They weren't visible while you were placing the camera. So it was like you'd throw the animations in there, you get those working, and then you'd have to like try to remember where they were when you place the camera, and then when you start the game, you'd have to go through a whole bunch of stuff to get to that point in the game to find out that your camera's staring at the guy's crotch or your framing's completely wrong up here, and so every night around 10 p.m., every single night around 10 p.m., like me and Paul would actually be waiting for me around 10 o'clock at night every night, waiting for me to come out of my office and go on over to Paul for the nightly troubleshooting session where we would sit there for like an hour at 10, 11 o'clock at night going over all of the problems, those technical issues we were having, and not how to fix them, but how to work around them. So that was an incredibly interesting development period. It was like, I think I spent maybe 10 or 20% of my time actually animating on that particular production.
Oh yeah, well, most game development is just troubleshooting anyway, right?
Oh yeah, it's terrible. I mean, it's a lot better nowadays. Oh my God.
Well, you say that, but
Well, that's it. That was my truncated version of that story I was waiting to talk about. So I got nothing left.
Cool.
Yeah, that was I just remember that was good times. Um,
Yeah,
but yeah,
I enjoyed the Jellicoe times myself.
oh
It
yeah.
was fun. Met a lot of
Well,
cool
yeah,
people there,
oh yeah, and it's actually really fun to see where everybody wound up. I mean, it's just
and
like,
just I really feel like I'm just gonna throw it out here briefly, just mention it, just to get it out of there. We did work with Adam Adamowitz,
yes, we
who
did.
recently passed away,
Yeah,
and he was
he was
cool as shit.
he was amazing. My God, oh, it was
And
he was on the next gen team, wasn't he?
yeah, he was on that
He
like
was on.
just a team with the shoot, I
There's
can't say
there's a
his name.
two.
It's two guys, and they're basically
Yeah,
in a room. It's him and then a designer type guy. God,
yeah.
I
It's like,
can't
well,
say his name now. We used to go to lunch all the time, and I saw that dude
mm,
put down two illegal Pete's burritos in one sitting. And that was legendary. Those things are like those things are like Chipotle burritos, like two
yeah.
big, and he just put them down. And he's in shape. He's not like a fat guy. He's
Oh, I
like
know.
he wasn't big at all.
Mm-mm.
Just like average size, but in shape kind of guy.
Well, he had
Anyway,
an
I can't remember his
infectious
name, but I can
personality.
remember this story about him.
But yeah, I mean, it was like they were responsible for Jellicoe's jump into Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3, and so it was always fun going in that room because they were working on stuff that was not even remotely possible yet.
Oh yeah, you
Um,
go in there and just see all these cool sketches from
and
Adam, all
yeah,
these crazy
and
ideas.
and
Oh, s-
Adam's art was all over the walls, and it was just like, oh my God, I hate you so much, in a good way.
yeah,
It's like,
I feel like I'm always jealous of concept artists that are like really badass and the
oh
ones that
man,
really draw on paper because they have all well, when you're drawing all day, I mean, like say I've worked on games where I made over 1,000 textures.
right?
But it's like whoever sees those, except when you're kind of running around in the game, you don't see them like up on the wall. Like they're not
Oh
real.
yeah,
You
yeah.
know
You
what I
don't
mean?
put your you don't put your brick texture on the wall.
But
I
it
mean,
is
it's just,
so dope when like a concept artist, because like one of the great artists we got to work with back at Jalika was Douglas Schuler.
oh
He
yeah,
did like the original IC manipulator for the Magic the Gathering cards. He was one of the
yep.
original Magic the Gathering artists, and the dude was a bad motherfucker, right?
Oh God, he was
And
amazing.
I got to sit beside him, and he would just whip out paper and start drawing. And like within seconds, I'm like, "What the fuck? That's amazing!" And there it is. You can hang it up on a wall, and fucking
Oh,
you could hang that on a wall, and people would say, "That's awesome."
oh man, he just
He's
was
just
a
so good.
knockout. Oh my, and like all the good one, and all the great artists, he was totally humble. He had no real opinion about his work. It was just, that's just there. I did
And
that.
totally drove a rape van.
I remember that. We hired Doug for our little educational game. He did all of our
Yes, we did
he did all of our concept
because he's
versions
that fucking awesome.
because he was badass.
He's
We
just
wanted
so
badass.
he's just such a bad motherfucker.
It's so odd when you have a strong concept artist
I
on
think
your
he's in
team.
Boulder still. I should figure out a way to visit him. I'm in Denver. We should hang out.
And we gave him so much crap for being a hardcore MMO guy. I mean, he could be laughing at us now because MMOs are huge now. He
Well,
was, he was.
there there's like one that makes money.
It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. They're all over. Every publisher is losing their ass on a multi-$100 million MMO production. Ride the wave, man, before it crashes.
Well, it already did. That what you're talking about happened a couple years back. It's done now.
Yeah. Oh man,
Sorry.
I heard that Terra. I heard that Terra cost like 400 million. Is there any substantiation to that rumor? 'Cause holy
I would
Jesus.
just say Google it. I don't know.
Oh my
I
God.
really do not know.
Old Republic over 100 million. That's just and now they go free to play within 6 months. Success. Great formula.
Well, you kind of have to, right? Like you have to make a product that people can instantly play, like a demo. Unless it's like a
Yep.
big blockbuster, like a game like say like a Modern Warfare or like a Far Cry 3 or Skyrim, like big. Just here's a big just single player adventure kind of thing or
Yep.
whatever, or with multiplayer as well. But An MMO is a different kind of sell. You actually have to let players get in there and kind of check it out and be like, "Do I like this? I don't know."
Hmm.
And if they do, then they pay for it and they get the full deal.
I am curious about the how that model's gonna like morph, what it's gonna morph into
The
in the
free to
next
play
couple years.
model.
Because yeah, it's like, well, right now it's looking like free to play is about the only way anymore, unless you're WoW. I mean, it's
Well,
a
here's what it is. What people don't understand about the free to play model, and this is the reason most games are shifting to the free to play model, is what people don't see, what they don't clearly see what's in front of them is the fact that what the free to play model is the same thing as shareware or demo. Okay,
Mhm.
here's the whole game. Here it is. But you only get like the first level or the first or you only get to gain 10 levels or you see all this other stuff going on in the game that you can't touch until you
Right.
purchase it. And that's what the free to play model kind of is.
That's the pay to win model, I think.
Well, not pay to win. You
Well,
you
isn't that
basically say here's the game
right?
and you only get to play it for so long before blah.
Pay to win is more
Not pay to win as in
right. Pay to win is
unlock the
you can
whole game, but you don't get the
well,
badass sword till you give us $20.
right, exactly. It's like pay to win
It's
is
total.
you
I'm speaking
you
totally different model.
yeah, yeah, you
I'm
can
talking about the whole like, this is the whole game. Here it is, but you only get a demo.
right, right. And if it works, great. It's just interesting to it's kind of neat to see that
Well, you know
the
how.
day the days of having to pay $15 a month for the privilege of playing the game is those days are kind of going away slowly or quickly, depending on how you look at it.
Basically, all consoles are are moving forward to that whole have to be online all the time, right?
Hmm.
So with models like Steam or the way like OnLive works, that basic idea, I feel like it's just going to shift to every game that you could possibly want. You can do this on the new Game Boy Advance, XL, 3DS, whatever it is.
Right.
I'm so out of touch. Um, you can download games on that thing.
Hmm.
And you can
Pretty
download
much
games on every console. So what it's going to be like, you don't go to the store, you just load up the console, and here's every fucking game,
right.
and you play it. And when you play just a demo of it, and then you say, okay, I'm going to buy it. And then you
It,
spend whatever money it is. And that's
it won't
how
even
it's
be
going.
it won't even be 10 years from now. There won't be
It'll
a
be
retail market for
a year or
games.
two.
Yeah. I mean, the next gen consoles, I don't know this, but everything, all the rumors are substantiating. And if you look at the Steam business model and you look at basically if they can, you will not be able to, it'll be like an iPhone. You know, when you walk into a store, you buy your iPhone, but if you notice when you go in
Yes.
to buy it, you go in to buy an iPhone, you don't see a rack of software for the iPhone sitting next to it. You buy the iPhone, and then you go home and you buy all your software that way. There is, you know, and what's even more sad is the, I'm a huge packaged goods guy. I love buying
The
a game and reading
collectible
the
thing.
yeah,
Yeah, it's
yeah.
cool.
I love to hoard this stuff. I mean, you know, like I love to open up the game and look at all
Oh,
the
I know. You
manual,
got
look
all
at
the
all the
toys.
yeah, look at all the art in the manual, and I just love all that shit. And even me have gotten to the point where I don't even give a shit anymore about actually going to the store and picking up a packaged good because look at like you open up an EA game, you crack the box, and it's a skeleton shell of a case because they perforated it to save on plastic. There's no manual. There's a one little pamphlet advertisement for another game they want you to buy, and there's a disc, and even the disc, and then when you pop the game in, you still have to enter in a code just to be able to get online with it, or something like that. And it's just like, what is the point of even having this game now that it's like now it's on my drive? I just throw it away. You don't even. There's no reason to keep this thing at all. There's no value. It's just terrible. So it's like for the most part, you look if you want to know how you're going to be buying your games in 5 years, grab Origin, grab Steam, look at Xbox Live. That's how you're going to be getting your games. GameStop's best years are behind them. They are. I don't know. I don't know how they're going to survive after 5 years from now. You won't be buying new games from GameStop because you'll be downloading them, and you sure as hell won't be buying used games because there'll be nothing to trade in. So what exactly are they going to sell? It should be interesting to see what happens to GameStop. Are they going to be the next Blockbuster? We'll see.
I was gonna go right into that. That's one of the weirdest things about video games is people that play video games generally embrace technology because if you want to play like top level games, you gotta have a PC to play the fucking like crazy future games on high spec and whatever. But for some reason, video game stores are still around while video like movies, blockbusters, they're all they're done. If you can find one, it's like wow, a video fucking rental place.
That's a good point.
It's weird that it's so behind. I know the Red Box is popular for those that are out of state or whatever.
Right.
The Red Box is basically a kiosk, like a Coke or Pepsi soda machine, a pop machine.
It's Blockbuster and a soda machine.
Yes, it distributes DVDs, Blu-rays, and they're outside of every grocery store. Like they're everywhere.
That was a genius business model on their part. It was just like, yeah, how about we just make it a kiosk and charge you 99 cents to rent? That wasn't the only thing that killed Blockbuster, but that sure as hell was
but the whole
major
concept
thing.
of that is like, okay, if watching movies and TV shows has eclipsed, they're ahead of video games. And ahead of that is music. Look at music.
Oh man!
Find me a music store.
How did that happen?
It just music immediate as soon as computers happened and the internet happened, music died. I mean, not died, but the way it was done. It had to adapt. It didn't die. Yeah. It had to adapt. And musicians, no, they make money now. But
right.
But there was a time where everything was like, oh no, what do we do?
Well, yeah, it was like music was the first one to do it. It was like, iTunes obviously was pretty much the big one for that. The iPod. It was the fact that, wait a minute, you're telling me, because, we're old enough. You and I are, amusingly enough, this is something that not everybody who's probably watching this podcast is familiar with. But do you remember having like a CD case the size of a giant backpack?
Oh yeah. Do you want me to get my CD case? That is the size of a giant backpack that is on the top shelf at the farthest right of my closet.
It was a standard staple in every self-respecting high school kid's car that you had a CD player or tape player if you're really old. If
you had a tape player, you had that cassette that you could put in there that had the wire that would connect to the headphone jack of your CD player.
Yep. If you were too
we're so old.
Yeah, and you would have a giant bag full of CDs.
It's a big ass bag.
And as soon as then all of a sudden this little iPod shows up and says you can store 150 times more songs in this tiny little handheld that goes in your pocket, and you can plug it into your car and you can jog with it. I mean, it was just
shit got real.
Oh man, it was like overnight, bang, death of the physical packaged goods. Music
Everybody
industry.
was like, I gotta find out more songs.
I know.
I don't have enough songs.
But you're right. Well, but is there like external forces that are keeping video games from sort of exploding to be all digital? Like, for example, the PlayStation and Xbox. They release physical goods and they do not sell their games online, at least not right away, or they're just now starting to.
Technically, every single publisher, their only purpose is distribution.
Right. So,
and without the necessity of distribution, if you can put up a website and put your game on that website, that's it. I mean, what more do you need? I mean, obviously you're going to make a Facebook page, a Twitter, all that social media crap, and sell it through that, and do what you can for your own promotion. But
right. So basically,
which is basically indie gaming.
Well, you have this tug of war going on where it's like
Steam Greenlight.
Yeah,
that's the new shit.
Every single publisher doesn't want digital, or at least not at first. They don't want digital because then all of a sudden, why do they exist? They're there to bankroll the games actually.
Well, interestingly enough, like it's something like some games. Oh shit! Sorry, kicked my mic. There's games that, like, take Amnesia: The Dark Descent, for example. That game sold 1 million copies before it was picked up. I think THQ picked it up and then put it in a box
Hmm.
and put it in like stores, whatever.
Yep. I mean,
But
it's
they
a.
didn't need that. But it was just one of those things like, oh, this is like icing on the cake.
Hmm.
Because most people that are going to play that game, it's PC only. So obviously you have a fucking internet connection and can just download the damn thing.
Yeah. Well, Steam is my opinion. If Steam is just amazing, other than the fact that it's just yet another walled garden distribution platform. It's like Valve's making money hand over fist, charging you 30% for every game you sell. But at the same time, there's a lot of value to it, you know. So it's a terrific setup. It's a very
Well,
what
from
would we
the
call it?
user perspective, I would say Steam is one of the greatest fucking things ever.
It is not, or
It is.
yeah, yeah.
I
I mean,
love it. It's amazing. When I first had to deal with it, just so I could play Half-Life 2, I was like, oh man, this is bullshit.
yeah,
But now it's like, oh, this is great. I can log on to any computer with Steam, fucking
yeah.
grab my game, and go.
What makes it work is that
Beautiful.
they're very what do you call it? It's a consumer. It's pro-consumer. All the features they add, all the things that they do are to make us as consumers happy. and you know, and of course, and I know that it's a humongous. It's the future because EA is trying to make their own Steam.
Origin.
Yeah, it's like they've smelled the
OnLive
money
is
in.
kind of like that too, but it's like a fully streaming Steam.
Yeah, OnLive's different. Basically says you don't even need a computer.
It
Just
didn't
have
take off like
you
it should, but I commend them for being one of the first to really do that because that's once like serious internet pipelines are established.
It was ahead of its time.
Yes,
It will be normal
it will
soon.
be that can save tons of money for everyone.
Oh, yeah.
It was literally a little box that just streamed the video and had a controller plug-in. It went
And
right
it
to
just-
your TV. If you've never used OnLive, holy crap, it's amazing.
Yeah. Well, not only that, but one of the reasons why gaming is it's like it's not as huge as television just because everybody's got a TV. Not everybody's got an Xbox. Not everybody has a gaming PC, but everybody's got a TV. All you need, you buy a controller for $20, put a set-top box up there, and suddenly you've got a game box that's just as good as anything out there because you're streaming it. The only thing that worries me about that, well, it goes back to my collectible mentality. It's like, wait a minute, you're telling me that now not only can I not own a physical product, but I don't even own the product at all. I just have I pay, you know, $10-20 a month for a service that lets me play. I hope my internet connection doesn't go down. I hope I don't have a problem with my billing because then I won't be doing much gaming. But but as an indie developer, something like Steam and the app stores, Google Play, these are just a godsend as far as potential. It's the fact that you don't have a packaged good eating up every ounce of potential profit, you know, as a game developer. I mean, if you release a game for $10 on Steam, you're going to see $7 every time somebody clicks the buy button. You put a packaged good up on the shelf, you got to charge like $60 to get that $7. So it should be. It's why I find it really weird that when you buy a game digitally, this again goes back to artificial barriers in the marketplace. If I buy a game digitally, I shouldn't pay $60 for it. I'm not paying for. Why am I being charged $60 to buy it
Yes,
digitally?
I've heard that exact argument before. Is the
yeah,
publishing and distribution with the box and the printing of all that thing? Okay, CD, disc, fucking the wrapper, the box around that, the manual, the box around that, the wrapper, the fucking putting it
The Walmart
on
Walmart
a shelf,
employees, the trucks.
putting yourself paying to be at the end of the row, all that bullshit.
It's all gone.
It's gone, but so why does the game cost the same?
$60. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say on one side it's just pure ass greed. The publishers are banking on the notion that you're used to paying $60, so you won't think twice about paying $60 to do it digitally.
Pretty much.
The slightly less cynical side of me says that I think also a lot of it is somewhat artificial due to the fact that, like for example, GameStop, if Sony or Microsoft says, hey, you could go to GameStop and buy Halo 4 for $60, or you can just log on to Xbox Live and buy Halo 4 for $20. Um, that slits GameStop's throat. And then at that point, GameStop says, F you, Microsoft, we're not going to carry your products at all. And suddenly, so you have this warring faction shit going on. And at some point, I'm thinking the publishers are not wanting to rock the boat of the retailers. The
It's
retailers
possible.
yeah, so I think right now they're saying, okay, fine, we'll offer our shit digitally, but we won't charge any less for it. That means great profit for us if you buy it digitally, and you don't get mad at us. So I think that's what's happening right now. But at the same time, it's bullshit. I should not be paying $60 for a digital copy. Uh-uh. It's, anyway,
So hey, to digress the topic into something else. After after our career in PlayStation development, you moved back to Nebraska and kind of like started your own thing.
uh-huh, yeah.
Uh, how did that happen? Like how did you go from okay, I fucking worked on some games, now I'm gonna start my own studio. The end.
The two didn't actually happen right after the other. It was a.
Oh no, of course. Oh, well, actually, well, I feel bad. I just forgot. I forgot to say what happened between that was our educational game we made.
Uh-huh. Yeah. It was we had a.
We need to talk about that like a bunch of idiots.
Yeah. That was we basically I got a phone call from a local I mean back in my hometown, calls me up, and
Lincoln, Nebraska.
Lincoln, Nebraska. They got some federal money to produce a video game that was educational in nature, and they wanted it to be a game that would, in their words, be something that a kid would conceivably want to play over Grand Theft Auto 3 or 4. To which case I kind of laughed at that notion, but I was like, all right, that sounds like a great ambitious idea. Let's do it. Let's make a real game that actually has some educational value.
And at the time, we were at the end of Jalico, and we were looking for something new. It was done.
Yep. Yeah, Jellicoe was going down, and it was like, well,
they didn't hide it.
Yeah. And one of and this is a slightly broader topic, and I don't want to be trying to say this in a non-negative fashion. The game industry is not necessarily for everyone. It's
Nope.
there's a very high probability as a game developer that you pretty much are gonna move states once every 2 years, and that's a long time to stay in one spot.
Nomadic lifestyle.
Yeah, and
Tough
and
on
I was
credit.
yeah. And I was married. I had a kid, and I was kind of weighing. I was like, okay,
Yes, that's one of the things I really think it is important in this, and just having you on is just the family man perspective.
it can take its toll.
different
I mean,
because you gotta think about people. It's
hmm
not just you. Like me, I can be like, well, whatever, gotta go over here.
yep, yep. It's if you're single and like to see the world. I mean, this is a perfect industry for you. In my case, it was kind of like, kind of want my kids to know their grandparents, kind of want to find a nice stable place so they can not have to live a vagrant lifestyle. And so that was all weighing on me. And then
you had you were smart enough to, or
well,
you had the counsel within you
yeah,
to make it in your hometown.
right.
So, close enough.
Yeah, and so one of the nice jump starts to that was one of the things that made it possible was this educational game. It was we got funded. We got I think we had a year development cycle on it. I think.
I had an 18-month contract.
Okay, it was 18 months, and it was so I basically moved back home, set up shop. And we had, I think, 5 or 6 people on the team, and everyone worked remotely.
It depends on the time.
Yeah,
It expanded.
it got up to about 5 or 6, and then it trailed off from there. And Christopher here was lead designer of course. And it was quite an interesting project. We had a good time making it. It was the first time I'd ever not only produced a project, but actually also worked entirely from my basement and with a team that was all over the world.
Well,
It was like,
you held a bigger plate than you might be saying. I mean, obviously you did all the animation, but you also balanced budget and stuff like that.
oh yeah, that was the fun.
Which
It
which
was.
yeah, good job.
You know, it was one of those things where I remember telling myself that I'd never want to do it again. It was when it was in it was also kind of playing the role of I had two teams. It was my art team, which was the fun stuff, and then there was also this educational and business team, where I was the guy that was paying our paychecks, and we had a teacher on staff or on the payroll, I guess you could say. We had a professor, a scientist, a doctor, and we had this consultant group that was just there strictly to check off and verify that yes, in fact, this game is educational. And I remember sitting in meeting after meeting with those groups, doing kind of a song and dance where it was like, okay, this is what we want to do, and this is why we think it will be educational, and so it was like juggling these two completely different styles of 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 groups. It was like you had the great fun game team, and then you had the professors and the guys in the suits and the ties, dealing with them. And that was a lot of fun. And we were so we anyway we did that, and that happened, and then things just sort of trailed off from there because we got the game done, but there wasn't really much of anything that was done with the game, which is when you spend 18 months eating, sleeping, and breathing something, it's hard to just step away and distance yourself from it. From the standpoint, it's like you handed your baby over to somebody who just just wasn't all that interested. So
That's pretty much how it went down.
Yeah,
We're like, we made a fun game and then gave it to people that added a bunch of very scientific clips between cutscenes and stuff.
That's an interesting. This was actually, I consider this. I actually look at this like from a optimistic perspective, looking out on the bright side. I actually learned quite a bit about the importance of playtesting, and also just getting everybody on the same page. We approached this game from a standpoint of a fun game that had educational value, meaning maybe you'll learn something. That was kind of the approach. From the very beginning, the company that was bankrolling this, they were like, no, we want it to be a fun game. Just make it a fun game. So I'm like, all right, we'll make it a fun game. And since it was being compared to, say, like Grand Theft Auto, we took the approach of this game actually has to have, I don't know, challenge, and it has to have objectives, and it has to have there needs to be obstacles for the player to overcome, and
there needs to be a difficulty curve that
yeah, yeah, and again, it was supposed to appeal to middle school gamers. That was what was always discussed, right? So we operated under that assumption for like 12 months. And then they decide with the alpha, it was the alpha or beta or whatever, that they were going to do our first real playtest in the field just to get some feedback. I'm like, great, yeah, let's do it. So I went to that playtest, and they set up a bunch of computers at a middle school, and they got a bunch of kids in there, and oh my God. I had always been under the assumption that most kids just played video games, right? Well, no, that's not the case at all. There's a lot of kids that don't play, and I was horrified to see half the kids in that play test couldn't even jump on a ledge. It was like, the very first level, was you on this crash site, and and it was designed where you kind of in this slight little valley. So in order to go anywhere at all in the game, you had to hit the jump button and be pressing forward at the same time to get over the ledge, just to go up a step, right? Well, we had to show half the kids in this playtest how to do that, and I'm like, we're in trouble. Not because the game was bad, because the people they were trying to sell it to was not the demographic we thought it was.
Oh, I remember
And
basically the basic path had to be very simplified.
yep,
But
we used
then
to,
in the way we took advantage of like platforming and actual gameplay that we implemented was by having secrets, and that was
yes,
the only way. Otherwise, it was pretty much kind of press forward and go.
right. The very first designs, the very first levels we built that actually wound up in the game for the most part because there was no, we couldn't go back and redo everything from scratch. I mean, it was almost Metroid in its stylization. It was just wide open exploration. You could find shortcuts. You could, at least, and it was just like
Yeah, I mean, it had
that was
I would give it kind of like a Jack 3
Jack 3
or
was
Ratchet and Clank kind of
Jack and
feel
the
because we
yeah.
had basically third person platforming with shooting and vehicles. So
Yep. Yep.
it was pretty fun.
That was actually not bad. I mean, it was rough around the edges, but
Oh,
not bad
sure,
at
but
all.
yeah.
But we eventually we had a script that was kind of a sci-fi plot, about nanomachines and everything else, and but when we hit that roughly 12-month period where we had done a lot of the production, a lot of that was kind of rolling and getting close to finished, and a lot of the relative core game design was functional. Suddenly we had to go and dumb it down beyond. I mean, it was like we had to strip out all the challenge. We had to take the story and make it as boneheaded as entire. Like before, we were being kind of subtle, where we were trying to interweave the. The
Yeah,
education of this
it
was
was a good
cellular.
idea that had to be watered down to the point that anybody could kind of get it.
I don't
I
even know.
guess
By the end
probably
of by the,
just alienating everyone.
by the end of development, you had test questions you had to answer at the end of every stage. That was by the end. You could not go to the next stage until you answered the
Yeah, this
text
is
question.
horrible.
And it was like, whereas originally it was like, you know what, if you interweave, this is cellular biology. It was like we were everywhere you played, everything you did, a whole story was centered around being in the cell and learning about how it functioned, and we interwove that into the storyline. But by the end of the hacking that the script went through, it was like reading a textbook with some sci-fi elements. It was just like it was frustrating to see. It was like especially frustrating when you consider the fact that had we known that this was the mandate from the very beginning, we would have made a much more successful game to that target. You know what I mean? It was like it would
Right.
have been
What
like,
what
oh,
we made was pretty much handed off and then turned into something else.
exactly. It
I
was
think
like,
they have videos on one of those sites. That I remember at one point I saw them and basically there's like a playthrough of the whole thing. There's
I think
two sites have already like got their links together. Basically, there's if you go to the nanolegends.com, whatever, it basically all like funnels to kindlehunt.com. I'll put that in the description. But
yep, I saw it.
yeah, it's ridiculous. Anyway, that's
But
I guess
so
it's the
anyway,
publisher.
yeah, I don't. That could be the publisher. I'm actually out of the loop on this one.
Yeah,
I gotta look
I
it
had
up.
never seen this before myself until just now. I was researching. But anyway, the point I'm saying is
But
they had the videos up of the thing, and I was like
mhm.
watching the videos, and the videos are a complete playthrough of the whole game, just for the scientific value.
Right, that's
And I watched the videos, and I'm like, I don't recognize this game at all.
I know.
This is totally different what they did.
Well,
But it's cool because, like I said, we had our
yeah,
deal, and
it was
we got paid and whatever.
yeah, and we had fun. I mean,
It
it
was
was like
fun.
and so basically after that was when that was winding down. I was also doing some work with this local agency with some friends of mine, local friends of mine, and uh, I got to be good friends with one of their business development guys, and he was and we basically just hit it off and just decided, and we were like, what, why don't we start up our own thing? And uh, we had to go, since we were in Lincoln, Nebraska, uh, we couldn't really build anything on a game development model. There was just no way. So we became a service oriented animation and production shop, so that's what we do most of the time nowadays, which is it's kind of neat though. We're kind of coming full circle though, because we're getting pretty heavily into interactive development using Unity lately. So it's kind of fun to be getting back into a smidge of game. It kind of has that game development feel around the office a little more nowadays, which is pretty cool. But yeah, it was like it was just one of those things where we met some good friends, and we all just decided both of us decided to just make a go in our rinky-dink little market, and we're really carving out a nice little niche for ourselves around here. So it's just all turning out.
What's some of the biggest projects you guys have got? And not necessarily the hardest, but the biggest bucks. Would you say it'd be like possibly something for the Huskers, or something that possibly resulted in a bunch of requests? You know what I mean? Like something that's like, oh, either you made a fucking lot of money off of it, or you did it, and after you did it, a bunch of people said, "Hey, I want you to do this for me."
We haven't really gotten what I would consider to be any ridiculously huge, really large budget stuff. It's like we've been doing
nothing crazy, but I mean, just
yeah,
relatively speaking.
Nothing. There's no specific angle, to be honest. I mean, the company is we've gotten to be pretty well known for doing good animation work and good MoGraph work in this part of town. So we get calls for that a lot. But interestingly enough, I think we're kind of on the cusp of some new stuff that I think is going to do exactly what you're describing. It's like one of the new things that it's kind of not new, but it is the combination of real-time 3D, like I guess you could say games, 3D games, in a web browser. Those two traditionally have never worked together. If you're making a video game, if you're doing any kind of GPU accelerated graphics, you're doing it in a game engine. You need a dedicated engine with a PC executable. You sure as hell aren't going to load up a browser and play that way. I mean, that was always the realm of like Flash games and that sort of thing. We actually did a little Feeding Frenzy style game like 4 or 5 years ago for the web. It was in Flash, and it was like PlayStation 1 graphics and ran like shit. But it was in a browser, man. And with there's a lot of 3D engines that are coming out for browsers now, and we basically just jumped right on that. And we're seeing a huge amount of interest from a lot of companies and clients that really are interested in, obviously, in app development. I mean, it's like, hey, if you aren't making something for the iPhone or the Android, OS, then what are you even doing? We want to be able to say there's an app for that. So
right, that's like a weird thing. Like it's kind of weird. Like the game industry, kind of, I don't know. I feel like a lot of people actually frown upon.
Well,
like people. It's how do I put this into words? It's a weird thing that I've seen from a lot of game developers that are like guys that are working on major projects, right? And then they see other companies that are just making. There goes my fridge. Other companies that are just making things for phones, and they kind of look down on them. I don't think that's necessary. I feel like that's not really a thing. You know what I mean? Like I feel like it's like racism. I'm like, that's not really a thing. Don't do that. Stop it. You know what I mean?
Well, it's
still a job.
I'm actually and I'm actually kind of surprised to hear that, because I would think, and because I guess it kind of comes from where you're at. If as a AAA, the quote unquote AAA developers, the guys working on $20 million productions, maybe there's a sense of a slight feeling of being threatened, maybe, by that market.
Yes, because they're as possibly.
Because what they're basically, what it exemplifies is that no one's going to spend $20 million on game development anymore. They're going to spend
You know
200.
what makes people mad as shit? When a shitty fucking shit ass $1 game comes out on a phone and it sells a billion copies.
Yep.
It
Yep.
makes everybody so mad.
I know. But at the same time, if as an indie developer, holy shit, it's like a whole new world. It's like shareware lives again. I mean, it's the fact that a couple people in their garage can make a viable game studio now, whereas that was unheard of in the PlayStation 2 days. In fact, I remember having tons of water
Well,
cooler conversations when the PlayStation 2 days came along. It was like the days of being able to make a game in your garage are long gone and never coming back. Well, they're back. It's like you're seeing single one person, two-person teams banging out a game that'll sell 400,000 units, but only for $1 a piece. But if you're selling for $1 and you sell 400,000, you've got a viable business. However, that market's so saturated now that it's like that's why I kind of look at like the Ouya and Steam and there's all these like new sort of walled garden
well, also the
ecosystems.
next consoles are gonna drop soon enough,
Yeah.
and who knows what those guys are gonna be like.
Oh
Oh,
no.
blah, look at all this shit. Blah.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's really interesting seeing massive budget development is as big as it's ever been. And at the same time, there's this groundswell of indie development that's just as big as it's ever been. It's like it's really neat to see two sides of that coin. And I frown upon neither one because I think it's amazing on both sides. I mean, the idea that you can make a video game in today's day and age that's potentially successful. But one of the problems with low budget development is market saturation. I mean, just look at the App Store on the iPhone. Oh my God! If you release a game on the App Store on the iPhone, you better hope that you happen to hit some top 10 list somewhere or something because you'll be buried in less than a day. No one will ever see your game after like 4 hours of being on the App Store. um, so it's a double-edged sword. I mean, at least with the consoles, if your game comes out on it, you're only competing with like, I don't know, 140 other games that month, as opposed to 4,000 games that day.
Oh yeah,
It's
the weird
ridiculous.
thing about the consoles is it's all about shelf space.
Yeah.
You say how many slots do you have on a shelf,
Yep.
and you're paying for that position.
Yep.
How crazy is that? And
Well,
that's
and
that is a concept that's done. It's over.
mhm.
Fuck that.
I'm actually considering all of the drawbacks and benefits and everything else. I personally just can't wait for this brave new digital age in gaming where the merit of a title isn't completely dependent upon uh, how much money, what deals were made to get it on the shelves, and or whether or not you're even allowed to join the party. There's a lot of great games that have been made that just have no shot at even getting released because they can't find any distribution. Um,
There's a lot of good games if you actually know where to go. Like you go to like indiedb.com or
mhm,
moddb.com, which is pretty much the same thing.
mhm.
There's so many games that they just release for free, and
Yeah,
I've got a few games on there too.
it wasn't. I don't think it just. This obviously didn't start anything, but I think one of the bigger success stories was Cave Story. That game was a
Yeah, Cave
free to.
Story. Oh my god, it's so cool.
Oh my
You
God!
can
If
download
that
it for free online,
you still can.
and
I mean,
it's an amazing game. But the newer versions are also quite good.
yeah. It blows me away. And it maybe just has nostalgia working, but I put more. I'm getting pretty jaded as far as it's really hard to absolutely thrill me in a game anymore. I mean, it's like you'll play a giant ass AAA $50 million production that's you're done in 10 hours and you throw it in the waste space. You go trade it in and you're done. And Cave Story hit me like a brick, and I just played it like 6 months ago, first time ever. So here's this little 8-bit style game, side scroller, just absolutely phenomenal game. And
Oh, absolutely. For
I'm
anybody
like,
that is unaware of Cave Story, it is a game you can download for free online on the internet, but you can also buy it on like Xbox Live now and with
mhm,
updated graphics and shit. But
right,
it's what they call the Metroidvania
style of game, yeah.
style of game, where it's basically, hey, look, here's a huge world, and you can go anywhere once you get this weapon or kill that guy or whatever, kind of thing. Wonderful game.
Oh
Loved
man,
it.
yeah.
Suggest it to anyone.
Oh yeah, and I would recommend the Steam version, just due to the fact that it's more convenient to play. The free-to-play one, you kind of have to find it and install it, and maybe add a couple mods, and to get your controller working right, and that, it may not work great on your hardware. Whereas the Steam version's really polished out. It'll work with anybody who has a controller plugged in, uh, and it's like $10. If you get it on a Steam sale, it's like $4 or something like that. So it's worth the worth purchasing on Steam for the convenience of just getting to play the game. And they've got updated graphics and music and everything else, so it's a little easier on the eyes if you're not an 8-bit fan like me. I actually prefer playing it old school, just because it's quite nostalgic.
Oh yeah,
Um,
some people love that.
yep.
It's a valid thing. That's
Hmm.
why some games like so kind of like Paper Mario kind of does that retro-ish.
Yeah, yep. But yeah, it's like a game like Cave Story, though. No one would ever have played that game in the traditional business models because it never got published. There's no way you'd ever get a chance to play what, in my opinion, is a game that stands toe to toe with almost anything that's ever come out. In terms of if that would have came out on the Super Nintendo, oh my God, everyone
Oh
raves
yeah.
about everyone raves about Chrono Trigger and Mario and Zelda. I mean, if Cave Story would have come out in that era, oh my God, it would be everyone's favorite game from that era. It's just that good. Um, and there was one guy that just made it and put it on the internet. It's neat to see that happen for indie developers. But it's
It's the same story that happened to things like Gary's Mod or
mhm.
Counter Strike.
Or Doom.
There's Doom was kind of like it was a game they made, but I'm just saying like actual mods. Like,
Oh, I see. I see.
but yeah. Any Doom kind of falls in that same category though, because Doom, but in a way they were one of the first shareware guys.
Yeah, they were
They
self-published, weren't
they
they?
they they put themselves in 7-Eleven with their shareware in one of
Hmm.
those like hey, here's shareware, fucking here's a disc.
Yep.
And people play the game, they're like, what the fuck is crazy? Oh my god. And then everybody bought it, and that's how
Yep.
Doom became successful. But it was a whole different method. Well, once the internet, blah blah blah.
Right.
Cave Story is an internet thing,
Hmm.
but Doom, holy crap! If I don't know if I was there.
Yep.
I'm sure you were there.
I was there. I was a little more peripheral because I didn't have a PC at the time, so I could only play
I
it at my friend's
modded
house and that
Doom
sort of thing.
so much.
Yes, yes,
Oh,
you did.
loved that
Yes.
thing. Loved modding Doom. There was so much. The shovelware. You ever heard the concept of shovelware?
Oh yeah.
There was so much shovelware for Doom, which was basically they would take every single Doom modification they could find on every bulletin board, which was when you with a modem you call somebody. You take your computer and you call somebody's phone, but it's connected to the computer, and you get their Doom mods, and the guy collected a whole bunch of them. It's so stupid. And he print them. He printed them to a CD.
Uh,
So you get like 600 Doom mods.
oh right.
It was
All
so
of them so
stupid.
bad.
And there were so many of those that you could buy. You could buy those at like EB Games. You could buy
Think of it as
those at Toys R Us.
the modern equivalent would probably be something like the Little Big Planet worlds, where everybody can make one. You just mod Little Big Planet. You have to shovel. You have to wade through like.
Well, yeah, but imagine if the only way you could get those was buying them in a store Or connecting to someone's BBS, a DOS dial-up, and you with your fucking 3.11 modems.
I'll tell you what, though, that made you appreciate what you got, though.
Yeah.
It could be the worst thing ever, but man, I spent 3 days trying to download that piece of garbage game, so I'm gonna play it till it's. I'm gonna play it till there's nothing left to play. Man. Where is that? Kindle.
See, I think we might have reached that point when we can wrap this up if you're interested.
Yeah, sure.
I know, a guy like you. Obviously, people recognize the fact that you can talk a lot.
I can talk all night. I'm sorry.
So, yeah.
Well,
try to wrap this up, and
we don't get a chance to.
We'll bring you back. I want to make you a regular.
Sure, love to
make you a regular guest because people are gonna love you.
Yeah. I can't. I'll have to. That should be interesting. But yeah, man, I'd love to anytime.
Sir, you got anything you need to promote on your way out? Your Outpost Studios. What is that, a website? Talk about
it. We've got outpost12studios.com is the company's website. It's just not a whole lot on there that I think you'll find gaming related yet. But we've got some stuff sort of happening that should be kind of fun to tinker around with at some point. But yeah, if you guys want to check out the stuff we do, feedback's always fun. But yeah, it's outpost12studios.com. Have at it. God. Yeah.
Well, I'll write that down and send it to my friends and tell them to check that out.
Yeah.
And everybody out there. Wait,
yeah,
you have a Twitter account, right? CG _ like some shit.
Holy shit! I think I do have Twitter.
You don't even use that.
I don't tweet, man. I've got Facebook. I'm on that stuff, but I should probably try tweeting someday.
We've got at CrunchCast. You can follow that. We got ask at Chris Holden DEV at Chris Holden Dev. That's my Twitter account, and yours is like CG _ some shit.
Something that sucks.
I know you don't even remember it.
I'm gonna have to tweet something now.
You can fucking like us on Facebook. You can find the video on YouTube. You can find it on Vimeo. Holy shit! Go to crunchstudios.com. Get those RSS feeds. Download the MP3s. You know what's up. Yeah.